Ooh, but I'm going to go ahead and get new wire. And right about now, too, it's a good time to take a break for your hands. We've been holding on to all of this. So you want to love on your hands a little bit, stretch everything out, stretch your neck out, stretch your back out. Make sure you're taking care of body and mind. And check your fingers. If you feel blisters developing, then that's the place where you put some more of the little bandages or the tapes. Okay, so let's come back after I cut another 3 feet of 28 gauge weaving wire, and we'll start again. All right, so now that I have all 7 rounds, and I know that because I have 7 coils. If I count to the right, 7. If I count to the left, 7, and 7 down from the tip. So right here, when I know I have all 7 rounds, I'm going to just bring my lid up and do a little comparison. I do this because sometimes your weave gets tighter or looser. So even though I know that the hinge round is my 8th one, I still just want to see how far off I am. So I've got 7 going on right here in my second disc, and I can see that it would benefit me to go around one more time and make 8 for the bottom of this basket. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I have 7 right here, and I'm actually starting my 8th one already. So I'll go all the way around, and I'll stop right here once I get 8 total coils on all 4 sides that I can count. Okay? Okay, so I'm almost all the way around an 8th time. I know this because I can start here and count from the tip 1, or coils, I mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Counting up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To the left should be 8. And then counting below the tip, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the one I'm on is number 8, and I'll end it right here. I'm going to start new wire. I'm going to go ahead and get another 3 feet, and when I get a few more, another 1/4 inch or so till I get to the position of right below this tip, I'm going to go ahead and go at a 45-degree angle and come back up the same coil instead of going out. So we'll start to grow the walls after that. I'll just anchor this new wire. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. I'm going to end it right about here. Okay, so now I'm here with all 8 fully coiled rounds on my basket wire. And I'm just going to take the lid and I'll just hold it up, and that's perfect. It should pretty much match the lid and barely sit right at the edge of your hinge against here, and you should have the slightest 1 coil brim around it. Okay, so that's pretty good. So from here now, I'm going to not grow outward anymore, but I'm going to start to go up. So rather than continuing to weave out, I'm going to push my wire slightly onto the basket or the disc. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that I'm starting to crawl up, and I'll just continue to wrap. When you do this, you got to make sure that you got space, because sometimes when you push up, you also push against that coil. So you make sure that you have space between them, just like you always do. And you continue doing the very same thing. So I've coiled about 1/2 inch. I don't like to go any further than that. I'm in between these 2 right here. So I'll go ahead and take my needle. I can still get at it from this way. Once we get a wall or 2, sometimes we'll have to go from the outside. And I'm just going to work carefully to do the very same thing. This first wire is going to want to fall back to the side. You just have to work to keep it upright as you weave it together. So once the first tie or 2 go on, it's a little easier to keep it upright. But it's important that the tension is there, otherwise it just falls back on itself. So I'm going to wrap that one. I'm not going to go as far in between or as far apart. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to this tie, I'm going to go between them, I'll go to this tie, go between them, go to this tie, just to make sure that this first wall has some nice stability. After I get a little distance, I'll do the same curve, but I'll make sure that this is on top of the coil rather than beside it. I've got a couple more stitches before I tie in right there. Make sure that I have space to weave into. Again, you would be doing this not directly on top of your table, but rather just in a chair in the open air, somehow propping the long end of this wire either on your knee or on the edge of the table that is a little ways away from you, so that you can manage this long weaving wire a little easier. It looks like I'm having difficulties because I'm trying to get in between my camera and the desk. So I normally do this away from the desk, just in an open chair. You see here it's starting to fall as I'm weaving. You gotta catch yourself on this first round and not get all mesmerized and let that happen. So just push it back up as you work. And like I said, after a couple of ties, it sits up a little bit easier. Where'd that needle go? Okay. So I'll put this one right here. Watch your finger. push up, pull in, make sure that it's on top of itself, make a little space right there, and lock it in. Weave to the next segment, which is right here. And again, if you give yourself some of this vertical distance here, it'll be easier. Okay, once you get this first wall up, it'll be easier. Okay, and I'm about halfway between those two. It's probably 14 or 16 in between each of my ties. And I'm just going to keep them a little bit closer like that to help my wall stay upright. Turn into the curve just like we've been doing all along. Just make the curve on top rather than out. So I'll go to this next intersection about 14 stitches out, about right here, tie on, and then I'll come here and tie on. So I'll be right back. Okay, I've coiled to right here, right between that weave. Just get that side tied up. I'm going to go ahead and curve my wire a little bit more. And I'll proceed to here, and then here, and then here, just in between and on every one until you get back to the place where we attached. So I'll see you back over here. So I'm getting there. It's a slow process. This first wall wants to roll back on you, but just keep it forward. As I work, I'm just pushing it from the sides here to keep it coiled up. Here's where it's sloped up, right at my point. So I've got a little ways to go. Just keep working yours. And now to start new wire, it's the exact same process. Just get a fresh piece of wire, slip in there. I like to try to hold on to both of them here on the inside. So when you break them, you can kind of make sure they break to the inside. I guess it really wouldn't matter on a coil this tight, actually. So I'll anchor my fresh wire. I just cut a couple of feet at a time this time because it's a little easier to work slightly shorter when you're working on these walls. And again, as I work, I'm just kind of pressing these inward to make sure that they stay upright. You're not just pressing them, you know, this whole coil right here is working to be shorter as we come around 360 so that it goes vertical and stays vertical. So it's not just that we've turned them up, it's that we're literally, you know, shaping it onto the coil below it and reducing its length, or actually in this case making it the same diameter as the coil below it. Okay, so I'll just keep working mine. Remember that we're going to pause right here where we first sloped up. You know, I think it was right about here, wherever yours is. And again, as you work, just press these sides up. Okay. Okay, so I am pretty much back to where I started. I did a full 360 with the 9th coil around, or the 9th spiral arm. And I know that I'm at a full 360 because here is where I slanted up to create the first wall. And also I know because here is the cut that I'm always earmarking as my kind of point zero. So just work with your hands, kind of shape it if you need to a little bit, keep it round. Right about here, what's really satisfying is, you know, if you kind of put them together a little bit. We're making 4 walls, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? It can only be 2 or 3, depends on what you want to do. But the next time around is the time that we're going to go through this lid and attach it. So I'm on number 9 right now, and I can tell that because I slope up here, and here's where the wire comes to meet. I'm going to go all the way around one more time, and this time when I stop, I'm going to stop just a little bit short of this mark right here, just about right here, so that we can make an upturn and go into the hinge. Okay, so one more time around, and again we're working to stay right on top of the coil below us. Oh, and you're doing this not on your table, you're doing this just in your chair where it can be easier. And I'm going to pre-turn the coil to make it easier for me. I'm going to go ahead and attach right here. And again, we're still just doing bricklayer style with our needle to get in there the best that you can. I'm at an odd angle, so I'm not always seeing it right. Go ahead and pass through to the previous coil. Nothing changes in the pattern. You're just vertical now, that's all. So, or the process, you're just vertical now. Nothing changes. So, just caught that one. This should be short enough now to where you could actually probably just go around it. Again, I have the oddity of my camera being right on top of me. But otherwise, this isn't as uncomfortable as it looks if you're sitting away from the table. You're just pretty much throwing that wire over that open space, pulling it into the coil. I can't fling it because my table is here and my camera is there. Okay, so I'm going to stay in the same pattern, probably attach right in between these. So right here, then right there, and in between bricklayer style the best you can to the coil before it. The coil before it now is going to be this first wall. So you'll just attach in between here. Okay, so I'll do a few weaves here and then I'll put the first attachment right here, start to go in between. As you work to create the second wall, it's going to be important that you kind of control the leading wire here to keep a nice curve going ahead of you, and then, you know, to just make sure that you stay round as you go around. Just work yours until we do another 360. So you've got 2 full walls. The bottom one doesn't count because that's the one that we first created, the disc. So this is wall 1. We're on wall 2. Once we get right here, you'll pause and then we'll do the next thing. Okay, so I weaved mine quite a ways here, and I want to pause right here and just take a look at where we are on the wheel of the basket. So here is round number 8, the last one of our base, and then we went around number 9 where we crawled up and did coil number 9, and then now we crawled up and we did coil number 10, which we're about to finish. So right here where your 0 point is, where basically your tip is, we're going to stop about 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 right before it, because we have 3. And then right over here we can see 3. So in this shallow space right here is where I like to put the coil. And so this is a pretty satisfying bit. Right about here you can take your lid, make sure the clip is down, and you can slide the hinge onto the basket. Kind of align it just right here to the left, right about where your 0 point is. There is where I like the center of my hinge. So I can see that I have a little ways to go. I'll weave to about 2 or 3 millimeter, right about here, and then I'll stop. And I'm going to check also that that's a nice fit all the way around the basket so far, and it is. So I'll catch the hinge there, and then I'll reattach, and I'll go around for time 11, where we'll make the little catch for this guy. Okay, so I'll weave for another 1/2 inch. That's about what it looks like here, that I've got to go about to right here. Okay, so I weaved a little bit. I'm going to stop and attach right here. My stopping point is right about here before I put my hinge on, so I'm going to stop here and dive in. That's pretty good. I'll weave a few more times. I want to get to about here is where I'm going to be the start and stop of my hinge. So I'll weave a couple of times here, and then I'm going to go ahead and slip my hinge on and see how close I am. It doesn't have to be exact, so long as you've got a nice even fit. You'll have to raise the wire slightly. Get your cap in place, and that looks pretty good. So right about here you can see I'm going to go maybe 5 or 10 more. I'm going to do some double attachments right here to reinforce this wire, and then I'll pass, I'll make a bend up and a bend over and pass my hinge on, and then make a little turn back down. So you'll see here in a second. That's pretty close. I've got about 5 or 6 wraps I want to do to get a little closer. And really, if you get the concept of where to put your hinge and clasp and all of that, this basket can be any size you choose. If you go a little bigger, of course, you have to give a little more wire if you go deeper. So I'll take my needle, go ahead and wrap once, pierce it again. Just try to get right next to it so that you can get a second one in there. That's pretty good. 2 of them should do it. Make a couple of wraps right here. And then right here, go ahead and lift, put your finger right here, make a deliberate curve in the wire up slightly. We're right here about a ½ inch above our, next to our 0 point. So I'll go ahead and slip my lid onto the box. Get it as close as you can with the plier, about a couple of millimeters. Push down right here to keep it stable as you make this little bend. Just barely there. And then fit your box to the cap, fit the basket to the cap. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then try to make an equal bend on the other side. Don't give it too much space. Just make a little downward bend. And then with just a millimeter or 2, make a little upward bend. Just like that. And now you're going to work with this lid in place. We're going to keep going around 1 more time, and 2 more times actually, but for now, 1 more time. Just fiddle that until it fits and realigns with your basket there, and that looks pretty good. So just work with that open. If you have length on here that you want to keep, just pass it through the hinge. Pull it through. It's a little bit, you know, sloppy wire right there if you pull it through, because it tends to do that. So I don't like to do that. I'm going to clip that later on, but just so I don't have to start and stop wire, to be a little bit frugal about my wire and continue to go with this length. I'll make a couple of wraps, and then I'm going to pierce through the basket right at about the same spot. It's a little bit tricky to do, but just work carefully. Just make sure this little bend is as equal or where you want it as you need, as equal to the other side and where you want it. It's hard after you attach it to adjust it. So that's about right. I might want to just right here get it a little sharper. That's pretty good. Okay, so now flip this open. Actually, so now right here at the base, go ahead and pierce through the basket. And actually right here, we could start going through the outside if you wanted, even make it a little bit easier rather than coming from the inside. Pass through right here. And it's only difficult in this little spot. Once we get it tied on and we continue to wrap around, the pattern is the same. You're just working now with the hinge on. Just make sure you get it nice and tight, just like you would anything else. Go once around. Make sure the wire is positioned. Get right in there and let's make a second one. Right beside it. Ow. Don't get your finger. Oh. It's easier if you work closer to your body. Again, I'm trying to stay underneath the camera here. Make sure it pulls through nice and clean, and that's pretty good. And make sure you've got a little bit of space between the coil and the wire and the bare wire. And then we just stay on pattern and keep weaving around, attaching here and in between, just like bricklayer style, here, here, here. And we'll get to about the middle, and then we'll make a little bump out for this catch. Okay, so weave yours on. Remember to stay on top of the coil, not beside it, so that we grow up and not out. Put your thumbnail in there, make a little space if you need to. Hopefully your basket top doesn't jiggle too much sideways, but that's okay. We're going to make one more layer, so don't fret it. You just want to make that as close as possible, to this hinge, okay? And again, there's going to be one more layer, so it'll be a little bit more raised. Okay. All right, so keep working. In the same way that you normally do. I'm going to get a new piece of wire now. My wire's getting a little bit short, so I'll keep wrapping. You keep wrapping and adding onto your basket right about, make sure your lid is on correctly. You can even mark the spot right there. But right here, when your weave gets there, you need to stop so that we can make a little bump out to catch this hinge. So go ahead and just make little marks right here so that we know that we need to stop right here. Okay? So I'll see you when we get there. Keep weaving on yours. And so far, I hope you're happy. It's looking pretty good. Remember to take little breaks. We're almost done. Make this little bump out. We'll come around. We'll make the upper catch for the veil right here. And then we'll finish the round. Okay? So we're almost there, you guys. Woo! What a surprise we can put on the inside. Keep working your wall up to here. This will be round 11. And then we'll make our little bump for the catch. So I'm getting close to my little spot here. I know that my hinge goes from here to here. So right here, I'm just going to make the tiniest little bump out and make sure that the top of my lid fits it. So I'll weave until I get close, and then I'll attach right before I get there. Right about here is good. You need a little couple of millimeter for the wire bend itself. So I'm going to go ahead and attach right here. Then I'm going to make a couple of wraps. So it doesn't have to be much. What you want is for something for that to clip down on. So it's not really that it has to go inside of it more than it just has to bump over it. So all I'm going to do is right here where it starts, I'm literally just going to make a little bend out and then make the slightest, tiniest bend back in. You can get your plier, maybe even work this upside down. But all you're looking to do is give the tiniest little lip right there. Grab it right here and make it bend back in the opposite direction. So just the tiniest little bump out. It's not offensive. It's not meant to make it go in there. It's just meant to give it something to clip over. Just a little bump, and we can adjust this guy to fit that better. If you want it to go in there, you know, bring it way out and make a catch for it. We can do that as well. And you can make those decisions when you get here too. I thought maybe just a little bump out, but now I'm thinking maybe I'll make it a whole catch. So I'm bending it right up at the weave. I'm not pulling, I'm not pushing. I'm going to take my little bend that I made out. And I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just going to make sure my wire's nice and straight again. I'm just going to give it about a couple of millimeters and make a slight bend back. Just work it carefully. Your goal is to bring this wire back down. You're making sure that this stays on top. You're making sure that this stays flat. And you're just going to shape it until that passes through. You could even put the lid down and try to shape it while it's in place. I don't like to make it too big, so it looked like it was too big, but you see when you pull the wire over, it's actually not. But it's hard to make it catch in there exactly. So you can work yours. Right about here, I think, is good. I think that's about all I need, and then I can reshape that to be a little cleaner. And then on the opposite side, you got to make it come back out. And before you start tying things off, make sure your wall is up. Make sure this guy is actually flat. Wire comes back. And then certainly close the lid down and see. That's going to catch pretty nice. So that works for me. Hopefully yours is somewhat similar. You can certainly use a round nose there as well. I used a chain nose plier, but you could use a round nose plier in here once you get the size. I just find the round nose kind of leaves divots here. So I work it with the other one, get it shaped, and then you can just gently shape it with round nose to get it a little nicer. Okay, woo, not too bad, you guys. Now we could wrap all the way, or we could just end the wire right here and start new wire over here, and that's what I think I'm going to do, is probably just end the wire. So I'll put it through the bottom coil. Right here, pass through. That gives me 3 long wraps to hold it right there. And I'm just going to jiggle it. I'm going to pull it tight. Actually, I can come back up. Snap into that inside coil. And then break it off over here on the inside. So you do what you feel is necessary to make that secure. I think I might come one more, since it's on the inside right here. I'm going to come back this direction. Make it really secure right there. So you see how I just brought myself down to the lower coil and wrapped a full 360 around it to make sure that that wire locks in, nothing is sightly there. And now I'll start this one the same way. I'll probably start it on the lower coil, get it locked in there, and then make a couple of wraps just like this side to reinforce that little edge right there. And then I'll proceed to bring this around to here and then pause right there. Once we get right here, we're going to jump the hinge and we're going to make this little bit, okay, for the bail. Ooh, we're almost done, you guys. Shape the wire nicely. We'll cut another 3 feet or 2 feet, whatever you feel comfortable working with. I'm probably going to go 2 feet of 28 gauge. And I'll start again down here. Just going to go ahead and start anchoring myself to this lower coil. Opening up a little spot right there. Get it passed through so I can hold on to it. Do a full 360 and come back through. Okay, so there's one full wrap. I can make the others with this one and anchor it in. With this long one, I gave myself a couple inches. So you can do that, and I can continue to weave on my basket here. I'll just go ahead and start right here. I think I've got these 2 crisscrossed right there, so I'll have to go back and clean that up, but I think you get the idea. Yeah, mine got a little crisscrossed. That's okay. Just clean it up. It's pretty okay. Nobody's going to notice that. Just break it off from the inside. So I'll just continue with this one. It's going to work out just fine. I'll probably anchor it right, another time right there, and then start going in between, just bricklayer style, till I get to the hinge. I had started some new wire back here, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. Now I'm just going to test my little catch. We've got one more layer to go. That works pretty good. By the time my fourth one's on there, that's looking pretty good. All right, you guys. I'll see you when we get to right here. It's going to be a little bit difficult getting into here. What's going to happen is that you can probably, when you get a little closer, close the basket. But we're going to jump the hinge right here, okay, with this wire that we're weaving. So it comes to right up against the edge of the hinge and then up and over with just enough room for you to get a couple of jump rings in there for the bail. Okay, for the chain, I mean. So just keep working. It's easier to stay above that lid until you get close. Okay, so I'm about as close as I can get here. And I'm going to go ahead and make my little bend up right here where this one bends. Just want to make a vertical bend up. Don't pull. You want to make it in such a way that you have enough to make this curve right there. Just make it meet right there. just like that. We're going to tie it all the way down right to the edge there, and then we'll just make a bend over the hinge. It's tight. This is probably the hardest part of the whole thing. I know I've said that in a couple of different places, but this is probably the hardest part of the whole thing. I'm just going to get real close, and then I'm going to try to tie in literally to that little open space right there. So I'll weave all the way up and just try to make a few wraps. You know, right here. Let's try to get there. That's pretty good. Get close. And then I'll wrap a couple of times right through here. Just keep in line with everything. Try to get it 2 or 3 times if you can. Open the lid. Sometimes it's easier to get in there. That looks pretty good like that. You can tie off by, coming down to one of these guys down here. For the sake of time, I'm just gonna I'll go ahead and do it because I cannot do it. So I'll just poke down here. Bring the end of the wire through that. So that it kind of vanishes into the coil and isn't just left dangling there. If you feel like you have to go twice, go twice and really lock it into that little coil. We've done a lot of work here, so we might as well do all the extra hard parts and make it good. Secure our little ends so they don't unravel on us later. So what I've done is I've basically gone 360 around the coil below it so that I'm ending within a coil and not on a bare edge where it can unravel. And that's pretty good. Just turn it and break it. It's pretty clean. Now up here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my leading fragment right here. I'm going to check this little hinge. I'm a little further away here than I am over here, so I'll use this little starting one. Just make some cosmetic wraps to make this look a little more even. And again, you can take it and bury it you know, in one of these lower coils like we did this other side so that it doesn't show and doesn't unravel. You can even take it from the inside. Okay, and that looks pretty good and looks like nothing happened there. Now I can break this off from the inside of the basket. Pretty clean. That looks great. That looks great. What you're looking for is, you notice you got four walls all the way around. So now we need to jump this one and make a little place for our bail. And I make sure that the lid is on, that everything is sitting correctly. You can use either your finger, just your eyeball. I just make a nice curve over. Just going to eyeball the slant down. You're looking to meet it back on this opposite side so that you can tie in. So just make that how you like it. Work it until you love it. I usually come here and see that come from the bottom here, because then I can see that I'm even. Just kind of make a U-shaped bend in it right there. That looks pretty good. Make sure it looks pretty good from the front. So I find if you do this first, you can shape it into size. Just make it like a U until it looks even. And then when you feel like you've got it, just need a slight slant back on this side. You can do this with flat pliers. You can do this with your chain nose here like I'm doing. That looks pretty good. So here I am. I've got the hinge. I'm going to go ahead and make a deliberate bend right down here. There's a tiny little crevice right there. And I think I'm going to end it right in there by just making a little loop right in there, as clean as I possibly can with this end. You can do yours how you'd like. You could just turn it in here and tie it on and end it just right there. But I think that's a cleaner close on the locket. Yeah, if we just tuck that wire right in there. Just make sure you've got enough up here for bail. Okay. This is probably the toughest part of the day right here. It's figuring out how to tie that off right there. I'm going to straighten this out slightly. could just make it easy for all of us and tuck it underneath the hinge here, but it needs to lock down somewhere. So I'm going to try to get it through that little loop. I'm going to cut this, leaving just a few millimeters to work with. And get on top of it here. Try to turn it over and get it through that space. If you can't quite get it through there, it's okay. Just work the best you can to get it locked down. I don't know if you can see me getting it through there a little bit. If you get it right to there, you're pretty good. It isn't going to let go. It isn't going to pull out. You've got to get it hooked right there. Okay? And then get it as clean as you can. When you get it, pinch it into place a little bit more. Okay? You can get it tight without too much interfering with the locket. That's in good shape there. It's not moving anywhere. Okay, and now we'll just use our pliers and we'll clean up this little bit here. Congratulations, you guys. This is huge. This is just huge. So first we can make sure that our bail wire is nice and straight. Just do gentle tapping until you get it shaped nicely. You can open up your basket. If it concaves a little bit, you can push it in a little bit. Push it out a little bit, I mean. So there's the basic basket locket, you guys. And just fiddle your pieces until it fits nicely. Just work yours until you get it right. Okay, and then if you made this Tree of Life earring set from my previous tutorial, which will be linked up at the end of this video and also in the video description, you can simply take the earring hook off of it, put a nice jump ring on it, or keep it as a standalone for your sweet little treasure locket. You can come through with pliers, make small adjustments, and taps to your cap, to the edges of it if you need to. And then we can put, you know, it pops right there like that too much, so we have to fiddle it here at the hinge. So I'm just taking my pliers and just doing kind of a downward squeeze on these last 3 or 4 here, just to get my cap kind of going in the downward direction. There we go. That's a little bit better. Just work yours until you get it. It's a beautiful little box that you can put treasure inside of. I think too I might have to fiddle this guy a little more flat. Just tap yours until you feel like it's in good shape. That's pretty good. Also make sure that your walls are all standing upright. By that I mean, you know, you can go through here and take your plier and just gently do taps along the walls. You don't want to change any shapes. You just want to make sure they're standing upright. And that's pretty good. Do some cosmetic cleanups. And now let's make a couple of jump rings. If you have a couple of jump rings, use your jump rings. If you don't, you can just take some spare 18 gauge here. Take a dowel that's about 8 millimeter, the size of a big pen or so. Come around it a few times. You can get a larger piece of wire. I'm just using some of the very last of the 36 inches here. So we'll have zero waste from pretty much the cap and the basket. So I'll just cut straight across here. And I'll take the two nice jump rings from the center. And like I've said with jump rings before, when you cut through with your flush cutter, there's always one side that has a little point on it. You see that? You gotta cut that little point off, but just barely, so that it sits flat together. And you can open your jump ring up. You can insert onto here and close your jump ring up. You can put 2 or 3 and just make this the bail if you want to. Just motion them back together. Nice and clean. If you cut that little tip off, you see it comes back together pretty clean. You just have to get them that way. Okay. And then same with this one. Come up here, I'll cut that little tip off. Now I have a nice clean jump ring. Open it up, put it through here. And you could certainly have made this bail wire any old way that you want. I kind of made it just like stopwatch style. And then from here, I can go into a chain to either side and wear my locket. So let me get a little chain actually, and I'll demonstrate that too. So if I'm going to slip chain through each one of these, then certainly while it's open, I would get the edge of my favorite chain, put it onto one side, get my favorite chain to the other side, and now when the locket sits on the neck, it sits like this, one going each way. Then you just split this chain, put your clasp on the end of it. You could have made that a lot smaller. There's a lot of ways to do that, but I feel like that's pretty clean. And it gives you access to your beautiful locket box. And I hope you enjoyed that. So when you come back next, we'll learn how to make a lid with the Tree of Life on it. And if you're not going to stash one in it and put one on it, then you can watch that video. Otherwise, you can stash one in it, close the lid, make a tiny little tree of your favorite bits. If I want to secure this tree in there, certainly all I have to do is, tie some of these spirals down and through the bottom here. Okay, so with my tree of life in there, it actually fits pretty tightly if you make it the size of the tutorial. And then to tie it on, if you choose to tie it on or to tie it in there, you just use a bit of 28 or 26 gauge wire, and you just take some 28 gauge. You'll have to feed, to and fro, but I just find a couple of logical spots like right here, maybe by the root of the tree where you can hide the tie. Where's my needle? But then you could get in here and just make a couple of spaces. Take your wire through. Certainly hold some of it up here. You're going to have to make a hole to come back through. So just going right below it so that you can grab the tree. So one anchor through here is pretty much all you need from that side. And then from up here, just find a spot either around the tree here or around the spiral there. For instance, I'm going to take this one right around the spiral leg right there. It's a little easier if you're not underneath the camera, but to get it 360 around that spiral, then of course I would just make the little hole right there. Bring my wire over and around the leg of the spiral right there and catch it. So I think you get the idea. You do that to one or two places, either at the tree trunk. You could also probably easily disguise a couple of ties, up here in the canopy. But that's all you would need to do. Come back here and maybe punch through one more time. Just keep track of where your wires are and where your fingers are so that you don't hook yourself going back and forth. Get into there. Make another tie around the spiral here, and so on. And like I said, you don't need to do a lot. You just need a couple of them in a couple of strategic places to hold your beautiful tree of life amulet in there. There you go. 2 or 3 times, and then back here, turn it until it breaks off. Or from in here, same thing, turn it until it breaks off, and then go tie the next spot. And make one right there and maybe one up here in the canopy, like this one in here somewhere, or to the branch right there. Okay, all right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That's how you get your tree in there. Close the little lid. And then up here on the top, if we wanted to decorate it, I probably would have done that before I attached it, but sometimes you don't know what's going on until after you attach it. So up here, if you wanted to do some embellishments, certainly you could take bead balls and tie them on. And I've got a few here that we can do. So I've got a nice little 3mm copper bead ball here. I chose to leave my spiral center open a little bit so I can just stick a nice little ball on there at the end. You certainly could have made that opening, you know, that beginning spiral a lot tighter, like on this one I did. This one is a little bit looser. You know, I could have probably gone a little bit tighter by wrapping a little bit more, you know, the cross section's a little bit tighter. But that happens. You make a couple of practice, it's still beautiful. So I'll go ahead and put my bead ball on here. I'm going to get it to the center here. Going to stick it through here, and of course I'm going to use these wires right here to tie it onto the lid. You can use those bare wire spaces right there, and of course your coil. So I like to just cross it, and you have to go back and forth, but it's not that bad. So there's this side of the ball. Make a few ties. And then rather than go back to that bare spot, I'm going to catch into this coil right next to it. So that it snaps into that coil right there. Make sure to go around that thing again so that it's 360 around there. And using this method, you can tie on as many of these little bead balls to the cap as you want. I'm going to do this one. That's probably all I'm going to do. But you can also, you know, if some of your little coils are further apart than you want or whatever, you can just add design to this lid. And it's super cute. So in the next video, I'll show us how to make the lid with a tree of life in it. And it'll be a little more open. So just get rid of that one and then repeat with the other half here. Get the bead ball situated right so that there's no slack. And then find the spot where you're going to tie in. Don't poke your finger. Probably works so that your chain's not on there first, but you get the idea. That's pretty cute. I'm going to finish this by wrapping around a couple of times into the coil here and then get rid of it. Little earthquake. That's pretty good. Get rid of that one, and there you go. The cutest little tree of life locket. So anyway, play with yours until you love it. I hope you enjoyed that. It was a big, huge project. And leave me comments. Please give me thumbs up. Let me know how you're feeling about this little technique. It's tedious, but now you know how to sculpt. You can sculpt anything you want with using this method, right? We can build 3D containers for our crystals. We can build little lockets. We don't have to do this big monster spiral. We can do 2 spirals to the outside, right? Had I had this tree, and I'll just show you the other one. Had I wanted this tree to be the top side of the locket, I could sew it onto the outside if I want to. Or while I was making this tree earring, rather than terminating it right here, I might have left that wire long and just gone around 2 more times and just made these 2 outer coils and the hinge, and then you would have had this as the top design to your locket. Okay, so we'll do that next. I'll show you how to make another cap or another lid to your locket with more open space and the tree, and then still we'll have this little basket for the bottom. Okay, this is the first one I made, and see, this was the front. I don't like that, so we redesigned it. We designed it with a little clip for you. Okay, so there you go, you guys. Enjoy, lots of love, happy harvest moon, and now you have a nice little harvest basket locket that you can collect all of your beautiful things in. We'll see you for the next one.